My parents promised to pay for my wedding, but funding my sister's business instead. So, I cut ties entirely. I'm 29, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. While that might sound like a compliment, anyone who's worn that label knows it's more of a burden than an honor. Growing up, I was the one who got straight A's, worked part-time jobs through high school, and never caused my parents a moment of worry. My sister Lucy, on the other hand, well, that's where things get complicated. Sarah was born middle-aged. My mom used to joke at family gatherings, as if my reliability was somehow amusing. And Lucy? Well, she's our free spirit. Free spirit. That was their polite way of saying Lucy, at 19, had never held a job for more than 3 months and changed her life passion about as often as most people change their socks. But she was the baby of the family, and in my parents' eyes, she could do no wrong. I'd accepted this dynamic long ago. Or at least I thought I had, until my engagement to Ryan changed everything. Ryan and I had been together for 5 years when he proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet moment on our favorite hiking trail, with the autumn leaves creating a perfect backdrop. That was us though, practical, sincere, real. When I called my parents that evening, their reaction seemed genuinely enthusiastic. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful news," my mom had exclaimed. "We've been waiting for this. Don't worry about a thing, we'll help with all the expenses. You've always been so responsible, and we want your day to be perfect." "Really?" I remember asking, feeling touched by their generosity. "Are you sure?" "Of course we're sure," my dad had chimed in. "You've never asked us for anything, Sarah. Let us do this for you." Those words would come back to haunt me. The months that followed were a whirlwind of planning. I threw myself into creating the perfect wedding, always conscious of costs but reassured by my parents' promise. I found a beautiful venue, a restored Victorian mansion with gorgeous gardens. The caterer I chose was reasonable but excellent, and my dress, while not extravagant, made me feel like a princess. Then came that fateful dinner, just 1 week before the wedding. I arrived at my parents' house that evening to find them sitting stiffly in the living room. The tension was palpable, but I couldn't have guessed why. Mom was fidgeting with her wedding ring, always a bad sign, and Dad couldn't seem to meet my eyes. "Sweetie, sit down," Mom said, patting the couch beside her. "We need to talk about something." I sat, my stomach already starting to knot. "What's wrong?" My dad cleared his throat, a sound I'd learned to associate with bad news. "It's about the wedding, princess." "The wedding?" My voice came out higher than usual. "What about it?" "Everything's already arranged." "That's the thing," Mom interrupted, her voice strained. We need to tell you something about the money we promised." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What about it?" "We can't help with the expenses anymore," Dad blurted out. "We've had to make some other arrangements with our savings." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What do you mean, other arrangements?" "The wedding is in a week. I've already paid for everything, expecting to be reimbursed." "What's going on?" My mother's next words hit me like a physical blow. "We've invested the money in Lucy's new business venture." The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline that never came. "Lucy's business venture?" I finally managed to say. "You mean her denim company? The one she came up with last month?" "She has real potential, Sarah," my dad defended, though he still couldn't meet my eyes. "She just needs a chance to prove herself." I let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Potential? Dad, she has no experience. No business plan. She doesn't even know how to sew." "That's not fair," my mom interjected. "She's very passionate about this." Passionate. I stood up, my hands shaking. She was passionate about becoming a DJ last month, and before that, it was opening a cat cafe. "How is this different?" "She needs our support right now," my dad said firmly. "We couldn't let her fail before she even started. So instead, you let me fail?" My voice cracked. "You promised me." You let me plan this whole wedding, knowing you'd given away the money you promised to help with. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Honey, you're established. You have a good job. You and Ryan can figure this out. Figure it out? I repeated incredulously. The wedding is in 7 days. Everything is paid for with money I don't have because I was counting on your help you promised me. Maybe you could scale back some things? Mom suggested weakly. Or postpone. I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who I thought I could count on. Scale back? Postpone? Do you even hear yourselves? Sarah, please try to understand. My dad began, but I cut him off. Understand what? That once again, Lucy's latest whim is more important than my actual needs? That you'd rather support her 10th passion project than keep your promise to your other daughter? That's not fair, Mom protested. Not fair. I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about what's not fair? What's not fair is that I've spent my whole life being the responsible one, never asking for anything, always doing what was expected of me. The one time I ask for your help, you give away the money you promised me to Lucy for some half-baked business idea that everyone knows will fail. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We thought you'd understand, my dad said quietly. You've always been so mature about these things. Mature? I stood up, gathering my purse. No, Dad. I haven't been mature. I've been a doormat. But not anymore. What does that mean? Mom asked, alarm creeping into her voice. It means you've made your choice clear again. And now I'm making mine. Don't bother coming to the wedding. Either of you. Sarah. Mom gasped. You don't mean that. I do, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. You chose Lucy over me again. Now you can live with that choice. I walked out of their house that day with my head held high, though my heart was breaking. That night, as I lay crying in Ryan's arms, he held me close and whispered, We'll figure this out together. We always do. And we did, though those next 7 days were some of the most stressful of our lives. That first night, after I'd cried myself out, Ryan and I sat at our kitchen table until 3 a.m., surrounded by spreadsheets and wedding invoices, trying to figure out how to make up a $25,000 shortfall. We went through every expense line by line. The venue was the biggest hit, $12,000 for the Victorian mansion and gardens. The deposit was non-refundable, and the balance was due in full in 3 days. I could ask for an advance at work, I said, running calculations on my phone. Maybe sell some stocks. Ryan reached across the table and took my hand. I already called my parents. They want to help. I started to protest, but he squeezed my hand. They insisted. They're not just doing it for me, they love you too. Dad's pulling money from his retirement fund. Tears welled up in my eyes again. I said that was too much. Sarah, he said firmly, they want to do this. Mom's furious about what your parents did. She said, and I quote, no bride should have to deal with this a week before her wedding. His parents ended up contributing $15,000, nearly depleting his dad's retirement fund. Ryan's brother offered another $3,000, and his sister kicked in $1,000. Still, we were $6,000 short. The next few days were a blur of painful decisions. I called the florist and canceled half the centerpieces, saving $2,000. The custom wedding favors were scaled back to simple thank you cards, saving another $800. The live band we'd booked was replaced with a DJ, saving $1,500. What about your dress? Ryan asked hesitantly one evening as we reviewed our cuts. I looked down at the spreadsheet, my throat tight. My dream dress, a hand-beaded Pronovia's gown, had been ordered but not paid for in full. The $1,700 balance was due in 2 days. I saw a lovely one at David's bridal on clearance. I started, but Ryan cut me off. No, not the dress. We'll figure something else out. That night, Ryan sold his beloved motorcycle, the one he'd been restoring for 2 years. When I protested, he just smiled and said, "I'd rather see you walk down the aisle in your dream dress than ride that bike for 1,000 years." His best man and groomsmen, upon hearing about the situation, pooled together their entertainment budget for the bachelor party and contributed it to our wedding fund instead. My bridesmaids did the same with the bachelorette party money, insisting we could have just as much fun with the girls' night in. Even our vendors stepped up when they heard what happened. The caterer offered to reduce the price per plate by $5 if we paid in cash. The photographer threw in an extra hour of coverage at no charge. The venue coordinator found us a less expensive linen vendor, saving us another $400. Every little bit helped, and somehow, through the generosity of others and some creative budgeting, we managed to pull it together. The wedding went ahead as planned, though certainly not as originally envisioned. Where there would have been elaborate floral arrangements, we had simple centerpieces. Instead of the premium open bar, we offered wine and beer. The wedding favors were heartfelt thank you notes rather than custom gifts. Lucy, of course, was furious when she found out she wasn't invited either. "How could you be so selfish?" She texted me the night before the wedding. "They're our parents. They were just trying to help me." I replied with a simple, "They helped you at my expense." Again, enjoy your business venture. The weeks after the wedding were hard. My parents alternated between guilt-tripping texts and angry voicemails. "I can't believe you'd do this to us," my mom cried in one message. "We've always supported you." "You're being childish," my dad declared in another. "This isn't how we raised you." But the thing is, it was exactly how they raised me, to be responsible, to handle things on my own, to never ask for help. They just never expected me to apply those lessons to them. Months passed, and as predicted, Lucy's business failed spectacularly. She hadn't considered minor details like production costs, marketing, or the fact that starting a fashion brand might require some knowledge of fashion. But true to form, my parents cushioned her fall. "We're sending her to business school," my mom announced proudly on Facebook. "The top program in the state. We're so proud of her for learning from this experience." I saw the post while sitting in my doctor's office, having just confirmed my pregnancy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here they were, throwing more money at Lucy's failures while I was building a new life without them. Ryan squeezed my hand as we looked at the first ultrasound. "Are you going to tell them?" he asked gently. I watched our baby's tiny heart flickering on the screen and felt a sense of peace wash over me. "No," I said finally. "They lost the right to be grandparents when they showed me exactly where I stood in their priorities." "Are you sure?" he pressed. "This is a big decision." I turned to look at him, this man who had stood by me through everything. "I'm sure. We're starting our own family now, and I want it built on trust and reliability, not broken promises and favoritism." Now, as I feel my baby growing inside me, I know I made the right choice. Yes, my parents will eventually find out small towns have a way of spreading news, and yes, they'll probably try to contact me. But I'm done being the responsible one who forgives everything. I'm done being the mature one who understands why Lucy always comes first. Instead, I'm focusing on being the kind of parent I needed, one who keeps their promises, who shows up when they say they will, who puts their child's needs before anyone else's whims. My baby will never have to wonder if they're second best, will never have to smile through the pain of broken promises. Ryan and I are creating something beautiful together, a family based on love, trust, and equal treatment. And sometimes that means leaving behind the family you were born into to protect the family you're building. Lucy's latest Facebook post shows her beaming in front of her new business school, designer handbag on her arm, paid for by the same parents who couldn't keep their promise to help with my wedding. But for the first time, seeing it doesn't hurt. Instead, I feel grateful that I finally saw the truth, grateful that I found the strength to walk away, and grateful for the chance to break this cycle with my own child. They say the best revenge is living well. I don't know about revenge, but I do know this. sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to say enough. To stand up and say, I deserve better. To walk away from toxic patterns, even when they're disguised as family loyalty. My baby kicks, a gentle reminder of the future I'm building, and I smile. This is where my story really begins, not as the responsible daughter who always understood, but as the strong woman who finally stood up for herself. As the mother who will make sure her child never knows the pain of being second best. And that, more than any wedding fund or family approval, is priceless.